are listening to Northwest Brew Talk. Now here's your host, Mike Rizzo.
Hi, welcome to this week's show. My name is Mike Rizzo, and this is Northwest Brew Talk. Thanks for joining us on our journey here to learn a little bit more about brewing here in the Northwest, specifically in our state of Washington. Now, to start out today's show, going to open up a beer from Iron Horse Brewery. This is Quilters Irish Death, a dark, smooth ale. So let's try this out. All right. This is a very dark ale. All right. So while the head is building here on this, we'll tell you on this week's show, we're going to give you some news headlines from the recent times. And also, we're going to have an interview with Josh Goodman, who is the founder and CEO of PourMyBeer.com. They manufacture self-serve taps, and we'll talk with him in just a moment. So let's check out our beer. Very dark beer, and we're going to take a taste of it. It's got a huge head on it here still. Good dark ale. And again, that's from Iron Horse Brewery, one of the Washington breweries. All right, in some brewing news this episode, and wanted to mention that this is episode 1. Let's see, brewing news. One of the more interesting recent events involved Lagunitas Brewing Company of California suing Sierra Nevada over the use of the capitalized letters IPA. Now, Lagunitas founder Tony McGee filed the suit on January 12th of 2015, claiming their distinct font, size, and characteristics would be confused by the new beer released by Sierra Nevada and harm Lagunitas' brand. The biggest thing was the way the letters were positioned right next to each other, plus there's no period between the IP and A. Now, the beer community did not take kindly to the brewing pioneer, and they took to social media to blast him. So just 2 days later, this lawsuit was dropped after the court of public opinion told Tony McGee how it really felt. Now, interestingly, it was very interesting, I should say, and I completely understand defending your copyright, your trademark, anything like that. But at this point, especially with that, I think he was just taking it a little too far. But this leads to another story. NPR recently ran a story on January 5th about craft brewers running out of names and the legal battles behind it. This brings us back to Tony McGee at Lagunitas Brewing Company. In July 2013, he received a cease and desist order from Sweetwater Brewing Company in Atlanta. The reason? Lagunitas used the numbers 420 or 420, which is code for marijuana, in many of its labels. Now, Sweetwater had been brewing a beer called 420 Extra Pale Ale since the 90s, and McGee complained on Twitter, but he then stopped the practice. With over 3,000 breweries and thousands of different beers, finding a name that hasn't been used is getting more difficult for today's brewers, and it's just going to continue to get more difficult. And with that, you can expect more lawsuits over names. Now, if we could all just sit down, have a beer, talk it over, I'm sure most reasonable people could find an amicable solution. That's it for the news on this episode. Let me take another swig here of our Iron Horse Brew. Now, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Josh Goodman, CEO and founder of PourMyBeer.com. All right, welcome back to Northwest Brew Talk. I'm Mike Rizzo. And we want to let you know that you can subscribe to our podcast here on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and other sites. And if you do like us, please give us a 5-star rating. That helps us grow our audience. Now, we are going to speak with Josh Goodman. He is the CEO and founder of PourMyBeer.com. Great company, that manufactures beer tables and beer walls with self-serve taps. So let's go ahead and talk with Josh. We're here with Josh Goodman, who is the founder and CEO of Pour My Beer. How you doing today, Josh?
Very good.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Okay, great. Well, why don't you give us a little bit of overview about the company? I saw on your website that you started or you came up with the idea in 2008. So why don't you give us a little background on how that went?
Yeah, it was, I guess a day like any other. Just hanging out with some friends, actually some old college roommates. We met up for a game in Baltimore for an Orioles game. And, we had gone into a crowded bar that I guess it was near the field, and just wanted to grab a few drinks before the game. And so we sat down at an open table, and that we began our wait. So about 15 or 20 minutes after sitting down, we finally had a waitress come over and say, "Hey, did you guys want to order something?" And obviously we did. So we ordered a drink, and then another 10 or 15 minutes went by, and we just all we were talking and catching up and everything, but it was frustrating because we wanted to have a drink,
Right.
So that actually happened 2 more times before I realized, this is not good. As far as we've come technologically, we're still sitting here for 30, 40 minutes with getting one drink, and it just occurred to me that not only are we unhappy, but the bar is losing revenue, and that's essentially a dual problem that I believe I could find a solution for. So that was kind of the beginning of the journey in 2008, and then I started kind of tinkering around with different concepts or ways to control the flow of beer. There's a company located a little north of me that did fluid control systems for factories and different types of systems. So I was able to buy some off-the-shelf type programming and some meters and valves, and was able to accomplish a set amount of fluid to go through a counter that counted up to a pitcher of beer, and you could set it for 1 or 2 pitchers of beer. So that was kind of the beginning of this journey, was creating a system that allowed that to happen. So then the proof of concept came in around 2009 in a bar called Mother's Federal Hill Grill. I knew the owner, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to try this out with you." And he said, "Sounds like a good idea. What's it going to cost me?" And so I didn't actually sell him the unit. I leased him my first 2 prototypes, and he paid his monthly lease for 6 months. And it wasn't a complete loss on his end nor mine. I actually got some press out of it and got some sales out of it, but I realized that I had to go back to the drawing board. That the beer table, the mobile beer table concept needed to grow. So then I partnered with a company in Europe to create a more robust software to manage it. And 2010, I would say was really kind of the jump off year. We got about $200,000 in sales, and just a lot more confidence, a lot more excitement behind the product. It was a lot more stable. And since then the concept has continued to grow and evolve, and as you've seen now, we do beer walls. But it all comes from that basic fundamental problem that I realized in 2008 was that there has to be a more efficient way to consume and dispense and drink beer and wine, and now liquor. We actually do liquor on tap as well now.
Okay, great. So what is the benefit to a bar owner other than the idea that you presented at the beginning?
Yeah, so I mean, the initial benefit when I got started was that efficiency concept. And, while that's obviously great, I mean, you're looking at, in some cases, selling double the amount of beer per customer through self-serve versus traditional serve. But, the other benefit is the decreased cost of goods. So, when you take out I don't want to say the middleman, when you take out the opportunity for loss when you're dispensing beer and wine and liquor, you're lowering your cost of goods by somewhere in the neighborhood of 25%. So, from pure financial perspective, you take the bar in that's buying 4 kegs to sell 3. Now they can buy 4 kegs to sell 4. So, just in that regard, if a bar is selling $750,000 or $1 million worth of beer, and it's costing them, somewhere around $200,000, well then you can bump that up 25%. So they've just realized another $50,000 in cost savings for the year. I mean that's a pretty big line item when it comes down to a small business. But when you compound the decreased cost of goods with the the value of efficiency, and then there's the X factor, the cool factor. Wow, I can go to this bar to pour my own beer. That will make them choose your location versus another because there's that fun factor.
Okay, yeah. Now, is this really geared towards larger bars, or does a smaller bar have a reason to carry the product too?
Yeah, so we're open to anyone. We have large. I guess I could not argue, but I could point out customers that we have in both verticals that do extremely well. I could also point out, like some of the difficulties with a small bar. Capital is typically a problem. They don't have the capital to invest in the business. Now, if it's a well-run, successful small bar, then yeah, then their problem becomes real estate. Do they have enough real estate to offer this attraction? And that's where we, with doing over 200 projects, we've seen and done every type of system. So, we could go to a small bar and we could say, yeah, you know what, you don't have the real estate necessarily, but where's your beer system at? Is it located in the basement? Okay, well, you can have some beer lines run up the wall, and then you can either have tables that have taps at them with the beer taps coming out of the wall, or you could set up a 6 or 10 tap beer wall that essentially just redirects traffic so everyone's not jammed up at the bar. In one of our slideshows, we used this picture from like 1960, black and white, and everyone's, just back to back to back, hanging out at the bar, trying to reach out and get the bartender's attention for a beer. And, the irony behind that is we've been doing that for, over 100 years. That's just, probably close to 150 years. That's how, or longer. That's how people have been trying to get drinks all this time. So, by changing the way that we're doing essentially the hospitality paradigm, in our opinion, it's a huge opportunity for the restaurateur, whether they're a small restaurant or large or whatnot. It's changing the way that they do things. And as we've seen throughout history, just like with technology, when you change the way you do things to be more efficient and profitable, it's a good thing.
Okay. Now, how do you prevent over drinking or underage drinking?
Yeah, so part of my quest when I started this journey was to get each state's approval. And I don't have a legal background, but at this point I could probably qualify as a paralegal in most cases, because I've read through and essentially argued every state's liquor laws regarding this concept. And the way that it's positioned to them is it's no different than if you were to set a bottle of wine on a table or a pitcher of beer on a table. So we only give a guest access to 2 beers at any given point. So once their card is activated to consume beer from our beer wall, they can only consume 2 beers. And then what happens is it says that you need to see a staff member to recharge your card. And that's a less than a 1-second process, but essentially they just get their card rescanned and then they can access more beer. On the court, in the event of a table, it's done in a cumulative format. So if you had 6 people sitting at a table, we would give them access to 12 beers. So those 6 people, once they consume the 12 beers, would then have no longer have access to beer until a server used a behind-the-scenes touchscreen button to give them access to more beer.
Okay. I mean, and I guess just like any other bar, it would be up to them to watch for underage patrons then.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that's the other argument that obviously I've successfully argued with every state is that whether someone is sitting at a table, number one, they shouldn't necessarily sit people at our tables that are under 21, but in the case that they do, they need to regulate it the same way they would if there was 4 21-year-olds and 1 20-year-old sitting there. They would vigilantly not allow that person to consume beer or liquor or anything.
Now, how many states is your product in now?
I actually haven't done a hard count on that, but I would say close to 30.
Okay. Is it? Have you been out this far to Washington?
Yeah, we have Seattle. Forelli's is one of our customers out there. There's also another one in the Sensa Tavern. It's kind of a remote part of Washington, but Washington has not exploded the way that I would have expected or hoped it would. I haven't had the luxury of going out there yet. It's been usually our service or installers that have made that trip, but we are putting a more focus on Northern California. Unfortunately, Oregon is one of the states that does not view our product as being responsible for whatever reason. So we're not in the state of Oregon, but we are in Washington, and we have approval.
Okay. I saw that one of the ways, I think so, you make money is by the taps working themselves. So you have an interest in keeping these things up and running, correct?
Yeah, we definitely, we have a vested interest with our customers to make sure that our system's up and running 100% of the time. And, whatever we have to do to make that happen, typically it's just a remote dial-in to resolve it. But if it requires sending out a part and a beer installation company to replace a part, we train the local installer on the typical replacement parts that are necessary if any of the hardware fails. But, we have built a system that's fairly responsible and easy to use and dependable.
Okay, great. So is your goal to get the product in more bars, into stadiums? I mean, what's the long-term goal for the company?
Well, we do have somewhat of a laser focus. I mean, we've kind of built our business off of bars and restaurants, and we want to continue down that path. But now we want to really focus on the larger opportunities. While continuing to do these projects that have essentially allowed us to exist. We just entered the airport market, and if we can get this recipe right, as far as making sure that the airports are seeing the return on investment that we want them to see. We could be at 100 airports by the end of 2016, which that not just helps us as a company, but from an advertising perspective, we can now sell advertising on our screens. It creates this. We're not just an equipment technology company that has monthly recurring revenue, but we're also an advertising company at that point. So, between that and also, opening up some of the hotels and opening up some of the other kind of verticals, we're looking at a lot of events, like Lollapalooza. We're based in Chicago, so we're in conversations with them regarding having our systems in place for those large events to maximize the amount of draft beer that can be consumed in an event setting.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, I think that's all. I mean, how many? I'm not. Let's see. What was that question there? Has the company been profitable since it started?
This year is kind of our turning point. I mean, we had high operating costs, just for we had some big salaries that really ate into the ability to profit. We've cut back on a lot of that, so this year looks like it's going to be a profitable year. But previous years, any profits got kind of eaten up by salaries.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Josh Goodman, the founder and CEO of Pour My Beer.
Thank you very much. Look forward to hearing from you again.
Okay, thanks for joining us. You take care.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. All right, that was a great interview, and I'd like to thank Josh for joining us. Now, one thing we're going to try every once in a while, we're going to give you a bar or tap room recommendation, and sometimes we're going to throw in if they're kid-friendly, because I have kids, and it's always a good thing to know. This week, we're going to go with Trainwreck. Trainwreck is in Burlington, Washington. Burlington's between Bellingham and Mount Vernon, and they have a great little place there. They have about a dozen different beers on tap. They've got this great wooden bar, and the place is always busy. They've got some great food there, all apparently homemade there. So Trainwreck is our recommendation for this week. Not a kid-friendly place, but we will give you some of those in the future. Now, I'd like to thank you for joining us here on Northwest Brew Talk. Again, my name is Mike Rizzo, and the show is produced and edited by me with engineering help from Michelle Rizzo. You can contact us if you want to contact us on Twitter. It's at NW Brew Talk. Facebook, it's NW Brew Talk also. Or if you want to send us an email, nwbrewtalk@gmail.com. This is Northwest Brew Talk. My name is Mike Rizzo. And until next time, stay hoppy, my friends.